was the boogeyman.
As a matter of fact, it was.
What's going on, horror fanatics? Welcome to I Shot Him 6 Times YouTube horror movie channel. As you know, I'm your host and creator of the channel, Marcus, and in this video I will be talking about the Hollywood Reporter article that dropped yesterday that clarifies Jenna Ortega's involvement for Scream 7, as well as talk about the announcement of the Black Phone 2 being set to release in June 2025, with all the stars from the first film set to return for the sequel. If you have not done so already, please shoot this video a like. It definitely helps out with the YouTube algorithm a ton, as well as if you happen to be a new viewer coming across this channel, please shoot that subscribe button as well as that notification icon so you get all the latest content updates to the channel. We start off with this Scream 7 article from Boris Kitt over at the Hollywood Reporter, and he starts off the article by saying, "It's a scary time for the Scream franchise. I'm sure we are all in agreement there. The firing of Melissabarrera and exit of Jenna Ortega begged the question of whether the next Spyglass horror sequel gets delayed further. For characters in the Scream movies, it's wise never to answer the phone, lest Ghostface be on the other end of the line. But after a tumultuous few months for the franchise, Scream Studio Spyglass is likely hoping its Cosmo and Digo answered, as it attempts to keep its next installment from getting the axe, amid a major casting shakeup and subsequent creative pivot. On November 21st, it broke that Spyglass had fired Melissabarrera from the upcoming 7th Scream movie over social media posts that company decision makers characterized as anti-Semitic. Sources note the firing actually came a month earlier, in the early weeks of the Israel-Hamas war, when Barrera had become increasingly vocal. Before her firing, sources say her deal to return to Sam Carpenter, the lead character she introduced in 2022 Scream, had been finalized. On November 22nd came the news that Barrera's on-screen sister, Jenna Ortega, had quietly exited the franchise months earlier. Scheduling issues were cited, but sources say Ortega, who has skyrocketed from child star to supporting player in last year's Scream to the A-list thanks to her return in the Netflix series Wednesday, asked for a bigger payday for the 7th installment, commensurate with her status. Unlike Barrera, sources say Ortega had no deal in place. Ortega had been paid in the six figures for her previous installments, but her team now wants projects with significant paydays, something that the Scream franchise is not known for. Sources say she was seeking high seven figures and anticipated that Spyglass would balk. Spyglass head Gary Barber is known for his shrewd business sense or for being cheap, depending on what side of the table you are on, multiple sources say. The studio had already lost Scream stalwart Neve Campbell over a salary dispute for this year's Scream 6, with the actress saying at the time that she couldn't walk on set feeling undervalued. Many predicted that film would fail without its original star, but it ended up being the biggest movie in the franchise since the 1996 original. Barber's apparent takeaway is that neither stars nor large salaries are essential. He didn't need Neve, he doesn't need Jenna, says one insider. Scream 7 was to have been the end of a rumored trilogy focused on the two Carpenter sisters. Even after Ortega departed, it wasn't much of a pivot to refocus on Barrera's more prominent character, but with both actors gone, restitching the whole cloth seems necessary. While some insiders say the situation is in shambles and very raw, it may not be as dire as it might seem. Scream has always had interchangeable villains behind the mask, assembled casts, and certain legacy characters. Another reboot will not fatally stab the franchise. Christopher Landon remains on board as director, as does James Vanderbilt, who co-wrote the two previous installments. Okay everyone, so let's first touch on the article and the clarification of both Jenna and Melissa's contract situation for Scream 7. I spoke about this in my previous video when the reports came out that neither had contracts set in place to return for the 7th installment, and I had stated that that smelled a little funky to me, not just because both in interviews spoke as if they were returning, but mainly from Melissa's standpoint. How as a studio do you fire someone if there is no contract set in place? However, with this article, it does seem that she had a deal that was already finalized, which makes a lot of sense for the studio being able to fire her, in my opinion. As for Jenna, it is not really surprising that she exited months earlier, as this article goes on to state, being a lot of us speculated that the filming for both Scream 7 and Wednesday Season 2 would be pretty close, making it difficult for her to be in the film as much as she was in Scream 6, which is why the theory of her character Tara getting killed in the opening scene for Scream 7 or just having a cameo picked up a lot of steam. Now, what is surprising about what was said about Jenna and her contract is the fact that not only was she not signed on and did not have a contract for Scream 7, but the fact that Jenna had asked for a raise from 6 figures to high 7 figures. It's not surprising when you take into account she has blown up massively in the Hollywood circles thanks to her role as Wednesday Addams, and is in fact an A-list star and deserves to be compensated as such. But the fact that she asked for this increase in salary, knowing the studio would quote-unquote balk at the request, as was stated in the article, leads me to question, did Jenna make this request as a way out of Scream 7? She saw firsthand what happened to Neve Campbell and her contract situation with Spyglass, but more importantly, it seems she knew the studio would say no to her request for more money, which is why it makes me ask that question. Will we ever get any answers to that question? Probably not, but it's something to think about for sure. When you add in the fact the article states that Spyglass head Gary Barber is known for being fairly shrewd and cheap, it only adds to the mystery of why Jenna would play this hand when the possibility of it being a successful one is bleak. They even go on to mention that given Six's success without Neve, that there's the mindset from Barber that if he didn't need Neve to make a profit off of Scream, he doesn't need Jenna either. And if that is the mindset, I'm going to explain why that mindset is a mistake for Scream 7. The reasons why Scream 6 did so well from a profit standpoint without Neve Campbell returning as Sidney Prescott is because the promotion for the film was very strong and garnered a lot of hype not just from Scream fans, but horror fans in general. But more importantly, the table was set in Scream 5 with meshing these new core 4 characters in with not only the OG characters, but timeline as well, by making Sam Billy's daughter. Add in the fact that Scream 5 had a lack of character development for our new characters, Scream 6 added a level of intrigue in terms of the fans growing to love these characters without Sidney being present, as well as to where this story with Sam being Billy's daughter is going to go next. But even more importantly, to a degree, Jenna Ortega herself, thanks to Wednesday, brought in an entirely new audience. This mindset from Barber of not needing a Neve Campbell or a Jenna Ortega or even a Melissabarrera, let's throw her in there as well, for Scream 7 or any other Scream projects that he may want to do, is a mistake for a few reasons. Number one, you lose a good portion of the audience that Jenna brought with her from Wednesday and previous projects that she has done, as some fans may be more fans of the actress than the actual Scream franchise. Number two, this mindset might not only prompt Neve Campbell not to return for the upcoming Scream 7 film, but other possible big-name stars may shy away from starring in the film as well. People not only want to be paid, but they want to be valued. Scream is known for its star power, which tells me if this truly is the mindset of Barber, that he doesn't need an A-lister like Jenna Ortega or something close to it like Neve Campbell, then this tells me that he truly isn't inclined and really has no knowledge on how the Scream franchise has thrived throughout its inception. Number three, by firing Melissa, you are now asking your fan base, older and newer, to not only learn a new story, but also new characters to follow, once again leading them back into the unknown, which is something we just had to experience with Scream 5. Just because that formula worked for Scream 5 and 6 doesn't mean it will translate to success for Scream 7 or any other Scream project beyond 6, especially being the majority of the fan base like the Carpenter sister storyline and a possibility in terms of direction and conclusion that it could have wound up having. Another interesting tidbit is at the end of the article, it states Christopher Landon and James Vanderbilt are still on board to direct and write Scream 7 respectively, but makes no mention of Guy Busick, who co-wrote 5 and 6 with Vanderbilt. Now, that's not to say Guy won't be back to co-write Scream 7, but it is interesting that he is not mentioned here in the article, especially for us Stu Truthers out there. Guy, as we are all well aware, is a big supporter and fan of bringing Stu Macher back into the Scream franchise, so if he is not on board, it does lead to question, will we see Stu back in 7 if Guy isn't a part of the writing team for the 7th film? I believe Guy is behind the many Easter eggs in Scream 5 and 6 that we got surrounding the possibility of Stu Macher being alive. And if he happens to not be writing Scream 7, one has to wonder if 7 would still pull the trigger and bring Stu back like many fans hope. Guy's return will be something worth monitoring as more updates come out. We now move on to the second half of this update video, as yesterday it was reported not only are we getting a sequel to The Black Phone, but it also has a release date of June 2025, as Anthony D'Alessandro from Deadline reports. Blumhouse's The Black Phone 2, Ethanhawke and original cast, returning for Scott Derrickson's sequel. Four-time Oscar nominee Ethanhawke, Masonthames, Madelinemcgraw, Jeremy Davies, and Miguel Mora are set to return for The Black Phone 2, the sequel to the hit 2022 Blumhouse Crooked Highway production / Universal production. A theatrical release of June 27, 2025 has been set. The first movie, directed by Scott Derrickson and co-written by Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, racked up over $161 million worldwide, becoming a sleeper hit in a rebounding summer last year from COVID. The movie also made Deadline's list of most profitable movies last year with an estimated net of $68 million. The duo are back penning Black Phone 2 and are producing with Blumhouse's Jason Blum. In the first movie, a 13-year-old boy who is abducted by a child killer in a suburban neighborhood and locked in a soundproof basement begins to receive calls on a disconnected phone from the killer's previous victims. Derrickson and frequent collaborator Cargill adapted from Joe Hill's short story. Hill is an EP on the sequel. Black Phone received high marks on Rotten Tomatoes with an 81% certified fresh critic score and 88% with audiences. Black Phone 2 reps the 9-feature collaboration between Blum and Hawke after The Black Phone, The Purge, Sinister 1 and 2, In a Valley of Violence, Adopt a Highway, Hamlet, and Stockholm. Hawke originally worked with Derrickson on the Sinister franchise. So real quickly, I am entering spoiler territory for the original Black Phone film, so if you have yet to watch this movie and don't want to be spoiled on anything, turn back now, as what I'm about to say may not be for you, but definitely give the movie a watch. It is well worth it. Okay, so what is interesting about this news on my end anyway is the fact that they are going a sequel route, as I assume, given how the first film ended with the grabber dying after having his neck snapped by Finney, that we will be going the prequel route, showing the previous victims of the grabber while also possibly touching on Finney's mom's possible connection to the grabber. Now that we are getting a sequel, it leads me to wonder if they are going the supernatural route with the grabber character, given that he was killed off in the original film, as that is the only way he can return for the sequel in my opinion, taking a page from Damien Leone with the Art the Clown character from the Terrifier franchise. It is also interesting that they got the rest of the cast from the original film to return for the sequel, which leads me to believe we could be possibly following Finney Shaw once again in the aftermath of his abduction by the grabber. With Mora's character, maybe we will see more of his abduction that we barely got to see in the original film. That is definitely a way that they could incorporate him into the sequel as well. But I think for me the most interesting storyline that could be explored is the return of Madelinemcgraw reprising her role as Finney Shaw's sister, Gwen Shaw, as in the first film, she would have these dreams/visions of Finney's abduction by the grabber, which actually ended up helping narrow the search in his whereabouts and for the police to end up finding him. Much like it was hinted that their mother would have these visions of the grabber, you know, that connection that I talked about a little bit earlier. Could she be the next one taken instead of Finney? That is definitely a possible plot point they could explore, maybe a role reversal of sorts, to where now that she's held captive, Finney adopts the same dreams/visions Gwen and his mother had of the grabber and his victims. There are definitely some directions they could go with for this sequel, and I am excited to see what Derrickson and Cargill have planned for The Black Phone 2, and I will definitely be keeping my eyes and ears open for any more updates that come along as we get closer to the film. But okay everyone, that is it for the Scream 7 and the Black Phone 2 update video. Leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know your thoughts on this Hollywood Reporter article for Scream 7, as well as let me know your thoughts on the Black Phone sequel that we are getting. Do you think it is the best route, or do you believe a prequel would have been the better choice for the next installment? Once again, this is I Shot Him 6 Times YouTube horror movie channel. I'm your host and creator of the channel, Marcus. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. Thank you all for watching.